Great. So how many of you skipped church to be here today? Yep. See, you've probably never seen me here on a Sunday morning. I like to sleep in. That's why I'm an atheist. That's right. I was fascinated to learn that on Reddit, there are 2 million people on the atheist page, but there are only 40,000 on the true atheist page. So I guess the fake atheists are doing a lot better. They believe whatever they want. And the dues, $40 a year, not bad. I love how he says that for students, it's $45? But for students, it's $10 for 6 months. They don't want you to do the math and figure out it's 20, so it's really not that good a deal. But there's no problem because nobody learns math anymore, so we're good. Just so you know, today I thought the title of this show was Why Betsy Salkind Can't Be President. So that's the show I was planning on doing. And apparently it became something else. So I want you to watch the show and then decide for yourself what you believe this show is called. Okay, so these are among, I'm just going to tell you my platform for as the president, and you will see for yourself why I can't be president. I went to Catholic school. Anyone? Yeah, that was awful. You know, being a Jew and all. They wouldn't let me take communion. They said, "You killed him. You can't eat him, too." I had to bring my own wafers. Nilla wafers. I was very popular. I'm not a very good Jew, obviously. I couldn't go home for Passover last year because I had a yeast infection. Some of you will have to ask your Jewish friends to explain that. It's just a bread joke. It's not a visual. So. Now I'm a Christian Scientist because that was the only health plan I could afford. No, I think the thing that turned me into an atheist was Sunday school. It was the story of Abraham and Isaac. Right? This is the one where God gets sick of lamb. And he asks Abraham to sacrifice his only son Isaac as a test of faith. And the lesson that we were supposed to learn from this is that Abraham had perfect faith and he was willing to do it, and therefore God was good to him and gave him a break and he didn't have to. Which is all very good for Abraham. But meanwhile, Isaac is in a support group for ritual abuse survivors. And then there's that story of Job, right? This is basically Satan and God get together. And Satan says to God, and I'm paraphrasing here, Job doesn't really love you. God says, yes, he does. And Satan says, no, he doesn't. Why don't you do some really horrible things to him and see if he still likes you? And God's like, okay, I will. So he kills his whole family, and he destroys his crops and kills all his animals, and then gives him boils and all kinds of stuff. And he still says he loves God. And his friends are like, Job, you got to leave him. I mean, it's only going to get worse. And Job's like, but I love him. So basically, Job is your classic battered woman. And God is OJ, I guess. So that's...
And I guess you got to thank the Lord, right?
Yeah.
Do you thank the Lord for that split-second decision?
I'm actually an atheist.
Oh, you are? All right, don't thank the Lord. But
so I watched that clip, before I had this whole bit prepared, and Mike stole it from me. But no, really, it was like, if I had been that woman, I would have been like, really? The Lord? Look what that fucking bastard did to my house. And oh, by the way, Wolf, is this what passes for journalism now? Yeah? Right? Yeah, an anonymous source did that. So, but, I was watching the news and I saw this story about this group of 50 Jewish women had gone to the Wailing Wall to pray, and this gang of Orthodox Jewish men came out and threw rocks at them. It wasn't very Christian of them, was it? Well, actually it was. And I was watching this and I'm thinking, why can't these men get more in touch with their feminine side and become self-destructive? And there's this old Jewish law, and apparently this is still true in a lot of Muslim countries and Sicily. But if a woman was raped, she had to marry the rapist. Unless, of course, she was already married. In which case, she had to be stoned to death instead. And we say we don't have choice. Really. So the Pope, before he hit his head and quit, he started tweeting. And the reason he said he was tweeting was that the not tweeting was why young people were leaving the church in droves. Yeah, it couldn't have been the child fucking thing or anything. I'm sure that couldn't have been it. Now, speaking of that, Muhammad married a 9-year-old. Yeah. I mean, there's some controversy about that because some people say she was 10. And the thing that I've always, one thing has disturbed me about, like, missionaries. It's like, the idea of the missionary position makes me wonder exactly how they were converting these people. Before I move on from religion, because I have a whole platform, I did want to share this with you. I found this lying on a metro train. Millions disappear, fact or fiction? And I thought this was about, Argentina and the dirty war, but it's actually about the rapture. A list of what?
What should disappear?
Oh, excellent. Yeah. I call that my honor roll for honor killings. Anyway, so I'm going to read directly from this pamphlet because I think it's very instructive. And, maybe there's some people here who are still questioning and haven't made up their minds. So there's important information in this booklet that I want to share. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because there's a lot of it, but I've picked out the best parts. The rapture is that sudden coming of Christ down into the atmosphere to catch up and catch away a body of believers who compose what the Bible calls, quote, his bride. Okay, so what this means in lay terms, Jesus is going to come back and he's going to take all the born-again Christians away with him. And, all right. And the way you're going to know this is happening is they're just going to get sucked up right out of their chairs. They'll be like, gone, not a trace, except for little pools of blood where they are, because that's dirty and that can't go with them. And there is the illustration. Lest you think I'm making this up. Actually, this is probably one audience that doesn't question the insanity of the illustrations. But, okay. The rapture is the next great event on God's calendar. Who knew? But can anyone determine the exact year and day? In 1988, a man named WeisenAnd wrote a book called 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Take Place in 1988. This work did untold damage because it destroyed the faith of thousands of Christians in the rapture. When the Lord Jesus did not show up that September, many Christians dumped the Bible doctrine of the rapture and went back to their old humanitarian ways. Oh. Quote, making the world a better place, end quote. They lost their vision. Okay. Ultimately, your fate is entirely up to you. Whether you wish to be part of the rapture and go directly to heaven with Jesus Christ, or whether you wish to remain on the earth through the tribulation without Christ, lost in your sins and hellbound. The final question then is this: which future do you prefer? 1, living with God in a perfect universe forever. 2, burning with Satan in fire and brimstone forever. These are the only 2 options. All right. So now here's why I really chose to read this. This next section is called What to Do in Case You Miss the Rapture. 5 things. 5 things. Number 1, don't get excited. Number 2, start working your way to heaven. That's what I'm doing now. Number 3, don't take any mark or any number. Explains, when somebody comes around and wants to put any number on your body or give you a number, especially the number 666, do not take it. Gonna be a long day at the bakery. Okay, number 4. And what was number 1?
Don't get excited.
Right. Number 4 is get fanatical. Be a religious fanatic, die as a martyr. And number 5, and this is a big surprise, but I swear I'm reading directly from the book. Number 5, support the Jewish people. It goes on to explain. Of course it would have to. The test for a Gentile is how he treated Jesus' brethren, the Jews. So, no matter how much pressure you are put under, never hurt a Jew. What you should have done was to get saved before the rapture. Thank you. I'm going to be selling these after the show for $6.66, if anybody wants that. Okay, so let's talk about the economy. It's tough times. It really is. I don't have kids because they're expensive, but I do have pets. I have to say, sometimes it's hard just to put food on the floor. I used to work at the Federal Reserve. I was a Federal Reserve bank examiner. I know it's all my fault. But I wasn't as surprised as some people when everything went to hell. And that's because as a bank examiner, one of my jobs was to go into the banks and make sure that they were complying with the federal regulations. And I actually had to have a meeting with a bank president and ask him, I need to see your plan for carrying on normal banking operations in the event of a nuclear war. And the guy's like, really? I was like, yeah, I know, but I have to see it. He's like, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be home with my kids. I was like, yeah, I know, but I have to see it. So, anyway, that's what our regulators do. Yeah. So I will be loading up on toilet paper and other things like that. I'm going to invest in marijuana and booze. That's my economy plan. Healthcare, that's a good thing. I know there's something seriously wrong with our current healthcare system. And I know this because Dick Cheney has had 6 heart attacks, and he's still not dead. I support Obamacare. It's not universal. There are people who oppose it. Some people don't think other people should have any health insurance. Some of these people were calling Obama Hitler. Truly, they called him Hitler. It's like, how stupid are they? The Nazis would never have a black Fuhrer. Right? And of course, they think there's going to be death panels, and that's just ridiculous. There's not going to be death panels. But I think it is reasonable for people to have an end-of-life plan. And recently, my mother told me that she had an advance directive and medical power of attorney, and that she wanted me to be the person to pull the plug on her. I have 3 brothers as well, but she chose me because she knew I would do it. I said, Mom, I just need to know what you want. I'll be happy to make sure you get whatever you want, but you got to tell me. She says, well, I just don't want any, extraordinary measures taken. I don't want to be in pain. I said, okay. Are you in pain now? How about now? No. They just come out with the women's Viagra. I don't know. I'm not very hopeful. I have never once had an erection. But, yeah. Here's my plan for saving money in healthcare. Rather than Botox, I suggest you buy one of those cans at the grocery store that's bulging. Same thing, under $1. Global warming. I blame Bikram yoga. right? That is not only the cause of global warming, but it's the cause of all kinds of bacterial infections. It's just gross. I would outlaw rain in Los Angeles, because let's face it, nobody in LA knows how to drive in the rain. And we don't have accidents here, we have pileups, right? But not like 3, 4, 5 cars. There was a 63-car pileup on the 15 freeway. 63 cars. How does this happen? I mean, I know someone stops short, the next one's on the cell phone, maybe the third one. But by the time you're the 63rd car, what is wrong with you? You hadn't even left your house, it was on the news. Education. That's something I'm pretty much in favor of. President Bush, I think, was evidence that maybe some children should be left behind. So. There's a Bush library now. I don't know if there's any books there, but I think that one library more than makes up for all the libraries closed under his regime. It was nice to see the Boy Scouts made a decision this week. Finally gay in a good way. Okay, I thought that was hilarious. You might be disturbed by this, but I have to say, after watching the Republicans over the last so many years, I no longer believe in evolution. Because they are not participating. Am I right? I mean, that was like a clown car of Michelle Bachmann, who said that the HPV vaccine causes mental retardation. Apparently she had the vaccine. And then there's Donald Trump, who I really shouldn't make fun of, because this is not my real hair either. I mean, it's my real hair, but it's not its natural state, because its natural state's really a big Jew fro. But now I go to a black hairdresser so I can look Asian. Now, this boggled my mind, that Governor Sanford got elected to the Senate. You recall him? He was the one who was got in trouble for having an affair with a woman from Appalachia or Argentina, some A place. Anyway, his crime wasn't that he had an affair, it's that he abandoned his office. He just disappeared for 6 days. And I think he owes Bill Clinton a big apology, right? Because Clinton didn't even leave his desk. Now, the RNC, and I'm all for for reform of campaign finance reform, and the Republicans got in trouble for spending $2,000 of contributor money at a sex club in West Hollywood. And this was a club that specializes in lesbian bondage. True story, Google it. I think it just shows how financially irresponsible the Republicans are. Because I know a lot of lesbians who would have tied them up and beat the shit out of them for nothing. And I'm gay for pay. So. But I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist, and I know this because otherwise I couldn't be continuously disappointed. Having said that, we're fucked. And I say this because, you know, it's about, I don't know, a minute before China calls in our debt, and then we're making their shoes. And I, for one, do not know how to make shoes, so could be in trouble. I want to talk about family and children for a little bit. I grew up in Connecticut in the 70s. It was a very ice storm. My parents were swingers, except my mom didn't know it. And I myself am bisexual. I've had sex twice. I'm married. I married a man, because it's legal. And I only like to do things that are legal. I married a man and I take prescription drugs. But I think the reason that some people are opposed to gay marriage is just fear, right? It's just fear of the millions of Mexican lesbians who are going to come here for green cards. That's all that is. But we don't have kids. which might be almost as bad as being an atheist to some people. But, you know, I'm way too immature to have kids. I get up at 7 p.m. and go to work for 15 minutes. And I think if we ever are ready to be parents, we're going to be those older parents. You know, the much older parents. We're going to tell our kids that their parents died in a car accident. And we're really their grandparents. And that's why we're too tired to do anything fun. Plus, I'm afraid to have kids because that hurts a lot. And my best friend had a baby. She wanted me to have one too so the kids could play together. Yeah, that's a good reason for me to have one. So she thought if I was there for the birth of her child, then I'd want to run right out and do it. I was there. It was kind of amazing. It was fascinating, miraculous, and disgusting. But I have to say, if you ever do this, get the epidural. Once I had that, it was a whole different experience. See, I remember from science class that pain is there to tell us not to do things. Ow, this stove is hot. Take your hand away. So we're not supposed to be having kids. That's basic science. That could go on the True Atheist site. No, but I've always wanted to give birth. I have. To kittens. Because I figured it would hurt less. And then when you're done, you'd have kittens. And people have litters these days. They do. Like Octomom, who's really Catorce Mom. And suddenly with her, people are thinking, maybe it's not such a good idea. But I've been onto this since the McCoy septuplets. Do you remember them? They were the first 7 that all lived. I think 3 of them can breathe on their own now. I wanted to drown them. Not the babies. I would never hurt a child. I wanted to drown the parents. Because they were so self-righteous. They kept saying in the press, God really wanted us to have these 7 babies. No. No, God didn't want you to have any. That's why you were infertile. It was Pfizer wanted you to have those babies. So I don't know how the populace will feel about this, but I sleep with animals. I sleep with cats. You know, we are not sexual or anything, just in the bed. But I have 3 cats, but I'm only allowed 2, so 2 of them have the same name. I am in a monogamous marriage. I feel the need to say that since we're here in LA. But sometimes I dream about other people. I mean, you can't help it. It just happens, right? It never goes beyond kissing, I swear to God. And it can be very awkward. You know, sometimes you have a dream about somebody and it's really intense and you can feel it all the way to your toes, like that. It's that first kiss. And then the next day you run into the person and all the feelings come flooding back. And then they treat you like nothing happened between you. All right, let's talk about abortion. Yeah. I'm getting an abortion. I don't need one. I'm not pregnant. But I feel that as an American, I should exercise that right before it gets taken away. And given the Supreme Court, I thought we needed some new legal strategies. And here's an idea I thought might appeal to Republicans. Fetal eviction. They don't pay rent, they're eating our food. Oh, it's a drain on the whole system. It's as bad as welfare. I had a pro-choice party. I told people to come dressed as the person they most think should have been aborted. That was a disaster. This other woman came, she was wearing the same dress I was wearing. We both came as the Pope. So I guess, my abortion policy might come down to something I like to call strategic postnatal abortion. And I will leave that as that. I am probably the one candidate who would have benefited from, or the one person, I should say, the one person in America for whom Mitt Romney would have job created. And this is because if he had been elected president, the next day abortion would have been illegal. And And it's all things that become illegal here, like drinking or gambling. They don't really go away, right? They just put them on a boat and float them offshore a little bit. So I was going to be the comedian on the abortion cruise. Instead, I have to run for president. I don't smoke, but I tried the patch, and I loved it. I thought, this is what's been missing in my life, so I threw away the rest of the box because I knew where that was going. I saw that there's a thing on the internet, or internets, as some people prefer to call it, about methamphetamine addicts, and they have before and after pictures of people who have been on meth. And the before pictures, maybe they're a little bit sad looking in the eyes, a little hollow and bored, but basically they look okay. And then they show them after a few months or a year or something of meth use, and their hair's fallen out, and they have sores all over their faces, and their teeth are gone, and their eyes are about 3 inches back in their heads. It's really horrifying. It's just horrifying. And all I can think is that's got to be a great fucking high. Right? I mean, why else would you do that? So when I'm told I have a month to live, I'm going to start doing meth. Because who wants to sleep when you only have a month to go? And my point is this, that there is a time in life for hard drugs, and that is the end of life, right? Don't do it while you're trying to have a family or a career or, any kind of productive life at all. Just save it for the hospice lifestyle, as I like to call it. Painkillers, and I want to be comfortable. I'm almost there. Anyway, no, that is the time in life. And for now, I don't do anything harsher than a Prilosec. Where are my acid refluxers? Anyone? Couple people? It's horrible, right? My doctor gave me a list of the foods I'm no longer allowed to have, which is everything good, right? Onions, garlics, spicy food, fried food, alcohol, chocolate, coffee. I put the list up on the refrigerator. My husband added butter, eggs, toilet paper. It's okay, he would be the first man, or whatever. So no, he's not very detail-oriented. He has ADD. I know, because I diagnosed him. And, comes in handy at Christmas, right? I don't have to shop for him. I just give him his own shit that he can't find. So. On a serious note, I'd like to talk about war. It seems that we're always in a war, and there's been a lot of talk about torture, and previous administrations have said things like, well, we had to torture them because we weren't getting any good information. And I just think there are things we can do short of torture, like translators. Work out. And then there's the Geneva Conventions, or the rules for war, which I think should apply all the time, everywhere. But in any case, my favorite Geneva Convention is the one that says that if a country invades another country, they're then obligated to feed the citizens of that country. So I'd really like to provoke Thailand. I love pad thai. My brother is a vet, an angry vet, And people always say, oh, Afghanistan or Iraq. I'm like, well, mostly dogs and cats. Let's see. Yeah. I want to talk about the death penalty for a moment. I had a cockroach infestation. Not on my body, they were at home. And at first I started to kill them, but then I felt guilty because I belonged to PETA. So I thought it'd be better if they would just kill each other. So I introduced drugs into their community. Did not work out well. Things escalated. I had to start a war on drugs. And that didn't work out either because they paid off the cats. And here's some evidence that theocracy has crept into our country, because now when they execute somebody, in a lethal injection, they lay them out like a crucifix. Does anyone notice that? Gross. So maybe that's what those crosses are. It's like death penalty. See, right? Well, it is, right? That's what that was. Okay. I'm a vegetarian. Anyone? A couple people? Yes, thank you. I think there are many parts of this country where that's more offensive than being an atheist. I'm a vegetarian, but I do eat eggs. I have to because I'm pro-choice. But I don't eat their mothers. See, now that's where I draw the line. Any vegans? Vegan? For those of you who don't know, vegan is like a vegetarian, but like all the way, right? No eggs, no dairy, no sense of humor. And there's a new restaurant here in LA called Cafe Gratitude. Transplant from Berkeley, of course. And the way this restaurant works is it's vegan, but also all the dishes are named for affirmations. So the raw chocolate dessert's called I am blissful. And the unstir fry is called I am accepting. And when they serve you the food, they say, you are blissful. You are accepting. They do have one dish that's not vegan. They have a hamburger called I am an asshole. Now, one other issue that I think most candidates have mental health issues, or they wouldn't be running even for that job. And the only difference is between those who pretend they don't, and those of us who are just out front about it. And I think I'm an atheist, I'm a vegetarian, and I have some mental health issues. I'm out with it. I have been depressed. And sometimes it's hard to know if you're suffering from depression because it seems so reasonable, right? Things are shit. But there are clues. Like, for example, I would catch myself thinking that my computer was letting me win at solitaire because it didn't want to play with me anymore. I bought myself a rocking chair because I love to rock. But if you don't have the chair, people look at you funny. So. We don't always get the mental illness we want. I'd like to be a little more manic. I'd also like to have the focus of an Asperger's person. They are like... I came up with a game show idea. Asperger's or asshole? I mean, I've been playing for years. Anyway... And, there have been a lot of issues. Some call them gun control issues. Some would call them mental health issues. What's the difference? Anyway, but what I've noticed is there's a pattern for a lot of these massacres. And what it is, and it's mostly men, sorry, they have a bad day or bad life or whatever, and then they kill a bunch of people and then themselves. And the thing I always wonder is, why don't they ever kill themselves first? And then if they're still angry, okay. Okay, I have some miscellaneous policy ideas. 4th of July. I just don't understand why there's so much pressure to spend Independence Day with other people. I don't understand that. There may be some issues because there's some video footage that may or may not have made it onto the internet of me performing at a nudist colony where I said, I am right now living most people's 2 worst nightmares. Now, what's interesting about the nudist colony is they have rules there, and they like you to be sure that this is not sexual. It is not sexual. And so there's a really incredibly disturbing amount of eye contact where they look you in the eye to say, I am not looking at your breasts, I'm not looking at your parts. No, I'm not looking at anything I shouldn't be. And it's like, it's really uncomfortable to be like, that's kind of intimate. It's like, could you please just look at my tits? This is really creepy. If I was the president, work hours would be a little bit later. I'm just not good at waking up in the morning, and I use an alarm, and I hear the alarm, but there's no part of it which my brain understands as that means wake up. So if I have on, for example, NPR, I basically dream for an hour about being on a panel of interviewees where nobody will let me get a word in edgewise. Very frustrating. And periodically, I will switch to the alarm, the beeping thing instead, and then I just dream about trucks backing up. Given the recent events in various places, including Cleveland, I'm sure you know that story, I think that we should institute random basement checks. And in the case of Oklahoma, that should include elementary schools, where we check to see if they have basements. Oh, and finally, I don't think there should even be one way to skin a cat. That concludes my platform, but I do want to say, and this may come as a big surprise to most of you, and honestly, this is my most intimate revelation today. I listen to Christian music. I know. Let me tell you how this happened. I would drive between Los Angeles and San Francisco a lot, up the 5 freeway, with the radio only, and I don't speak Spanish. So I would be listening to the radio, and a nice song comes on, la la la, and they say, and Jesus, I'd be like, whoa, they tricked me, Flip around a little more, find something else, la 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 la, and the Lord, ah! And after a while, I realized, I'm alone in the car, no one has to know. So I start listening to this music, and there's some good music, and it's sort of happy and joyful. I mean, this is the loving Jesus. This is not the fire and brimstone. That's between the songs. And, where they tell you to call your senator and do horrible things. But anyway, but what I realized listening to these songs is that Jesus is a lot of people's imaginary friend. Right? Because all the lyrics are like, I'm never alone because he's with me and you can't see him, but I know he's there. And, the kind of things that when you say it about your friend Sally, your imaginary friend, they lock you up. But because Jesus is a lot of people's imaginary friend, it's real. So, okay, I know.
It's working.
Okay. So this is my impression of a seagull. It's a seagull. There's an atheist seagull, of course. They all are, right? I have a lot of free time. I'm sure you knew that. Okay, so this is my cat, Boutros Boutros Ghali, sneezing. Thank you. I wrote that myself. And now the cat in heat. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to drag myself along the stage. Instead, it's too early. This is the male cat's response. Thank you. One more. And now, with no segue at all, my squirrel impression. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Betsy, for starting our Sunday off in a very humorous way. And because you're our guest, you don't have to clean up after yourself.
Thank you. I know. Don't drop your popcorn, because we don't have to clean that up.
So please give a round of applause for Betsy and also Tiana. Thank you for coming up. And so my name is Rosa. I'm the Vice President of Atheists United. Me along with Michael will be doing the Q&A session. So raise your hand if you have a question. I'm a little blind, but I think Michael can see a little better from down there. Two things. Please make them direct and short, because we want to make sure that everybody has a chance. And also, when you're done, pass the mic back to either myself or Michael. Okay? So anyone have a question?
We get started in the back.
Okay.
Then we'll have the
move
mic back and forth
Perfect.
between the two of us. So
Okay.
put the mic back on the stand for Betsy, and then let's get you on the mic.
Yes? Haven't I answered everything?
You have, except for one except for one very important thing.
Yes.
Last time you were here, you had these fabulous coloring books. I think you should talk about those.
Oh, actually, they're not coloring books, but they kind of look like it. They've already been colored in. I believe you're referring to Betsy's Sunday School Bible Classics. Yes. Which are, basically, I took the stories from the Old Testament, and I put back all the stuff they take out so children won't run away screaming. You know, all the rape and murder and genocide and all that stuff. And then I illustrated it. And I give voice to the women, the children, and the animals. And it's the real stories, but somehow it's hilarious. And there are some in the shop back there. Feel free to just read the whole thing. And I did the illustrations too, although it looks like a 10-year-old did it. Yeah.
And you were also at the book festival.
Yes.
I want to thank you very much for being at the book
Thank
festival.
you. It was a lot of fun.
When you run for president, which presidential ticket are you going to run on? Which party?
Oh, that's a good question. How about the party? I wore pearls, because what candidate doesn't? You know, they're not real or anything, but I'm not either.
Do we have any other questions here? Okay. Well, let me pass it on to them, and then you can bring it up.
I heard you write jokes for Anthony Robbins. Is he an atheist?
You know, it's a good question. I very specifically, I wrote jokes for him when he went on to Politically Incorrect. So I wasn't, and I haven't done that for a few years, but I guess it's such a weird credit that people like to stick that in the bio. I don't know is my answer, but probably. I mean, he doesn't talk about God as far as I know. I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to find out. We'll have to Google that.
We have another question for us.
Okay, the question that I'd like to ask is, it's been reported that the military was involved with over 26,000 sexual assaults this last year. What would be your best approach to resolve that issue? Thank you.
I would get rid of the military. I think that would be the most effective way. I mean, obviously, I think that, they should take those decisions out of chain of command. But I also think that women, if we're going to arm anybody, it should just be the women. Let's try that for a little while, see how that works out. But for the most part, there has been a real problem with rape and assault in the military, and I think the problem is that they're raping the American military people. I mean, they've been raping everybody else in the world forever, so this is just, now it's like, wait a minute, that's our own friendly fire rape. I mean, it's not just the military, by the way. I don't want to suggest that that's just a military thing. It's not.
We got another question on this side. Do we have any questions on that side while the mic is already there? Okay, we got one in the back.
Sorry, the men are raping each other, too. I just want to add that in, also.
So, if you had a chance to respond to Obama, he during the tornado, he said something about he was sorry what happened, and we just have to pray to. He used the word God Almighty.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, if God is such an almighty person, why did this happen to begin with?
Yeah.
And where does he get off speaking for everybody?
Well,
president.
For the first few years, I cut him some slack. I'm like, well, he just has to say that. He must really be an atheist, right? And it does. It drives me crazy because the truth is, I don't care whether you believe in God or not. But if that God is real, then you should really not be worshiping him because he's an asshole, right? I mean, he's like an alcoholic dad who just gets pissed off and wipes out everybody. It's all over the Old Testament, and it's just that. I mean, seriously, tornado like that, that's Old Testament shit. And that is, part of why I wrote the Bible stories was I thought if this is what we're going to be basing our morals on, then we should be honest about what's in there. Because I think a lot of that stuff is truly immoral. The idea that we're supposed to be respectful of religion is, I find, really problematic because I don't respect that kind of behavior. And I chose the Old Testament because that applies to all three of the Abrahamic traditions that we're supposed to, respect.
Well, Ms. Candidate, there's one question I know is on everybody's mind. Boxers or briefs?
Commando.
Just try to switch up all the way up.
What's your favorite, worst, evil, horrible act in the Old Testament?
Oh, well, one of my favorite stories, and I say favorite in a very, it's truly the classic, and it's actually not in the print version, but there's an iPad version of the book which has 8 stories. And the one that I feel best really represents that whole thing is called The Priest and the Concubine. And it starts with gang rape and it ends with genocide. And it's a classic. Yeah. Yeah.
When did you become an atheist, and were there any funny childhood or at any point in your life events that led you to become an atheist that you can tell us?
Well, I think I referred to that it really was like learning the Bible stories in Sunday school. It's like, wait, God told Abraham to kill his son, and that's a good story? And that really was like, I don't like that story. And then, and I was raised sort of Jewish, and I spell raised with the Z. I do remember going to temple and the men standing up and saying, "Thank God I was not born a woman." And I'm like, well, this is some sexist bullshit. And so I was, it was pretty early. I would say by age 10, I was like, I don't think so. Yeah, and then the more I learned about the Bible and all that stuff, like the more grotesque it was. I mean, just like an honor killing? Yeah, does that really take away your shame? You fucking killed your sister? You know, yeah, no, I had a lot of trouble with that. A lot of trouble with that. Not funny, but that's it.
Okay. Now, can you hear me now?
I can.
Okay, yes.
We all can.
Who would you choose as your vice presidential running mate?
Oh, good question. Kiana. Because I think children's rights is the next big movement that needs to happen. I mean, you know, the interesting thing about those Bible stories is almost everyone thinks they're hilarious. And because they, you know, I basically tell the stories and then I let the women, the children, the animals speak for themselves, which they don't get to usually. And but there have been a couple people who just read them and thought, these are fucking horrible. What is this? And they were people who had no religious background. They didn't go to religious school. They didn't learn about that stuff. And to them, they are as horrible as they really are. But for those of us who were like raised with it, you know, there was always a part of us that was like, something's wrong with these stories. And then to see it with a slightly different interpretation, I think is kind of healing. But I don't think kids should have any religious education. Except to learn how problematic it is.
Any more questions? We got time for 3 more questions if anybody's got one. Right here, right? Okay. Rather than waiting for...
Just shout.
Get the mic on.
I'm already halfway there.
When you're performing for general audiences, do you introduce your atheism differently at all? Do you have...
No, it's the same jokes, really, yeah. I mean, I don't do that Reddit bit, you know, that's...
Do you have any stories about people responding very negatively to your performance when they find out you're an atheist?
You know, I say so many things that are offensive to so many people that the atheism really doesn't come into play so much. That's why I wear a dress, so I can get a little bit farther before people are horrified.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Were you always doing secular jokes, or was there a moment where you realized, you know what, this atheist crowd is really good for me. I'm going to go ahead and make some jokes and appeal to that crowd. Is that when did you realize we were such an awesome audience? Is what I'm wondering.
Just now. No. No, you know what happened was I heard Bobby, the former president, on the radio once, and I thought she was just awesome. I loved her, and I thought, you know what, maybe she'd like my Bible stories. And I sent her a copy, and she got back to me, and that's how I got involved with this organization. And, you know, it's been awesome.
Were you always doing biblical humor or things like that, or...?
You know, I did. I had the jokes, like individual jokes, and then and then I had a friend, there was another comic who had been the son of some kind of preacher from Kentucky, and he's the one who told me about the priest and the concubine, and we would sit around and talk about these horrible Bible stories and laugh and laugh and laugh, and, you know, trying to come up with bits, and then I decided that they really would be awesome illustrated as if it was a children's book. And I wanted to sneak those little Bible stories because they look like they're for kids. You know, people would come to the booth and they'd be like, "Oh, a children's book," and I'm like, "Oh, well, you know, you're going to have to do some explaining here. It's children's language, you know." And where was I? I'm sorry. The train went off the track there.
No, you got it. You answered it. Sneaking them in a bit more.
Oh yeah, I'd love to just like sneak them into Bible school to kids. You know, it's like, "Hey, what's this?" You know, like after because usually like. The stories always end a little bit before they really end, right? Like in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, God turns Mrs. Lot into a pillar of salt because she wanted to see what he did. And that's where it ends, But really what happens after that is Mr. Lot takes his little daughters up to a cave in the mountain, and they, according to the Bible, they get him drunk and use him, unbeknownst to him, to impregnate themselves because they really want babies, right? So that's all in the book. Very enjoyable. But anyway, I've always been doing that material. I think is the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you found any modern miracles or things that the church has done that provide as much fodder for you as the biblical Bible stories in terms of comedy?
Oh, I mean, the priest fucking the kids thing. I mean, that's just endless.
Yeah.
With the interesting thing is that everybody knew about that way before we finally knew about it, right? Because there have been jokes about it as long as I can remember, and I think jokes is kind of how we talk about shit we're not supposed to talk about, right? It's like everybody knew, otherwise we wouldn't all be laughing and getting the jokes, right? And then one day it comes out, oh, this is real. And so I think humor can be a really good way of starting to get stuff out there, or just to hear what's really going on.
Thank you.
Pass the mic down there.
Richard Dawkins is regarded by many atheists as the most eloquent living voice for atheism. Do you agree with that? And if not, who would you nominate? And how would you use him in your administration? Thank you.
All right. Well, I don't feel like I'm sufficiently an expert enough to say who's the most eloquent, but I would use everyone I could in every way possible, because that's what politicians do. Excuse me? Just blood.
Okay. Once again, thank you very much for coming. Thank you guys for being here. We have a nice full house, which is great. We do have lunch, so we have this community hour for everybody. So we have sandwiches out now and pizza's on the way.